Before I share the message this morning, I'd like to invite Calvin to come up and make a very special announcement.
Hello. Does anybody like sea glass? Oh, excellent. I brought a bowl of sea glass to give away, so after worship, please come back there and take enough to give away to others. Now, sea glass happens at the beach. If somebody brings a bottle and it gets in the surf, the waves will break the bottle and then tumble it in the sand until it turns into a little shining jewel that you might find on the beach. So I do want you to take enough to give away to others. But this sea glass is very special. See, I drank the beer, I broke the bottle, I put the pieces in the tumbler with sand for a month, and this is what I got.
Full circle.
So this, you see, is actually counterfeit sea glass. And I am now including you in the conspiracy of counterfeit sea glass. So when you take enough to give away to others, it's really up to you on whether or not you let them know that this is counterfeit, or will you just let them think that this was a little jewel that you found on the beach? So I want you to take enough to give away to others. Just a second. This is a church. And I have just propositioned you to lie to your friends. But there was no malice in this lie. Maybe this lie is harmless. But if a lie can be harmless, can the truth be harmful too? Do these pants make my butt look big? So yes, I want you to take enough sea glass to give away to others, but this is more than an invitation to take sea glass. You see, this is also an introduction to today's sermon, because Jim is going to talk about lying. And please, take enough to give away to others.
We get it now.
Pass it around now. Let's do it. You can hold these in your fingers and rub them and ponder the deep implications of what our dear Calvin has just shared. So yeah, Calvin put me up to today's sermon. He said, I want a sermon about lying. Okay, I'm on it. So here we are together making this happen. And it's interesting, what does it take to make, I just, thinking about what Calvin has done here, say, what does it take to make, what is sea glass? It is just glass that has been tumbled in the sand at the beach. Beach sand, tumbling glass. Well, that's what this is. It's beach sand tumbled over glass. It's the same. It just happened in a container with an electric motor spinning around for a long time. But it's the same thing, is it not? Okay, so you get to decide how to present this to your friends when you hand it out. Great example. Lying. I've heard a lot of it. Of course, we've all heard a lot of lies lately, have we not? It's become normal in politics, or an effort is being made to make it normal. And so we're bombarded by lies coming from our president, from our government, more than ever. And so this is a subject that's very real and intense for us these days. In my role as a pastor, of course, part of that is being a confessor, one who receives confessions. People tell me truths that they don't tell to others. Oh man, how many times can I recount of being on airplanes and then the person next to me finds out what I do for a living, and all of a sudden, crazy stuff I have heard in my career. Riding in planes, oh my goodness, wow. A safe person to tell the truth to. Okay, great, swell, I get to deal with this. Anyway, I thought I was taking a vacation, but no. But it's a privilege too to be in this position and receive these truths from folks. Recently, I've been the confessor to someone, nothing to do with the church, okay, with a man who had an affair and has lied to his wife about this. Pulled the wool over her eyes, so to speak. Given her alternative facts, yeah, as it has been said of late. The woman with whom he was having an affair cut the affair off because she didn't want to break up her family. And he was very sad and torn up about this because he was madly in love with her. But given that the affair could not continue, he wanted to stay married to his wife and make things as good as he could. He wanted to get over this infatuation. And I urged him to tell his wife the truth. Because I'm a witness in my own marriage and in observing and hearing as a confessor about the marriages of many, many other people, that telling the hardest truths many times is the way you get to much deeper intimacy. It's like the harder the truth is, the more intimacy. That it is a very intimate act to share hard and difficult truths with your partner or your friend or whoever. Takes you to a whole different level of intimacy. But he said that if he told his wife it would devastate her, ruin her life, break up the marriage, that would be the end, it would be a disaster. So he didn't like what I was saying. And shortly afterwards, he emailed me a message that he got from his friend that he had confided about this stuff to, this affair. And the friend sent him an email, which he passed on to me. It's a very long email, very affirming of my friend, very compassionate and caring in its tone, and it assured him that it would be cruel to devastate his wife with the truth. I asked him about his friend. Who was this friend? And he finally confessed to me that his friend was AI. Hello, everybody. You know, a lesson for us all, is it not? AI companies stay in business by having their algorithms tell their customers whatever it is that they want to hear. Funny how that works. So take that with a grain of salt when you get advice from AI. On the other hand, this encounter did make me ask myself, are there indeed times when it would be wrong to tell the truth? I did have to sympathize with this man's plight. It was genuine, you know, it was made choices that it's hard for me to imagine making, but in any case, he loved his wife, he wanted to stay with her, he wanted to make it good. He knew he had to get over this infatuation. And of course, he knows his wife better than I do, and he believes that telling his truth would wreck their marriage and hurt her soul very deeply. He felt very bad about what he had done, but he thought it would add injury to insult to tell her about it. And I let him know that I knew he was between a rock and a hard place, a cross and a hard place, if you will, that indeed it was a conundrum, but in my experience, telling the truth was worth the risk. The truth will hover over a relationship, whether it's shared aloud or not. It's just there. And while telling the truth can mean the end of a relationship, that isn't the end of the world either, if it can be done in a respectful and caring way, gentle way, that may itself lead to some deeper intimacies. And yet, of course, there are times when telling the truth is just plain cruel, right? Comes a point in the process of dementia when it no longer makes sense to tell the person suffering from it that the person that they are joyfully awaiting to come visit them has been dead for 25 years. And there are times when lying can make the difference between life and death, when a lie is absolutely necessary in order to protect people from serious harm. We want our government to lie to us sometimes, right? If it's in the interest of an immediate national security risk. And we expect that when the crisis passes, our government should tell us the truth about what happened. Our public health officials during the COVID epidemic, they lied to us about masks. They said, you don't need to wear masks. And they did that in order to make sure there were enough masks for our health professionals so that they could save lives. So the government lied to us in the interests of public health. Unfortunately, when we did get enough supply of masks and they gave us advice that we should wear masks again, they didn't do a very good job of explaining what they had done and making sense of the lie that they told us. And that eroded trust in the system. Years ago, a colleague of mine who wrote a book called The Dishonest Church. He wrote about the lies of pastors around the country who know perfectly well that, and believe and understand, that Jesus did not physically rise from the dead. But they preached that dogma anyway about the resurrection because they were afraid of their church members. They were afraid that they would upset their parishioners and that so-and-so would pull their pledge and the building fund would never make its goal and so on. Or more likely they lied about what they knew and believed because they wanted to save their jobs, right? And I have a colleague who was a fundamentalist pastor for years and years, and he lied about his beliefs. He didn't tell the truth that he had given up the dogma that he was preaching. The minute he retired, he talked about it. He was liberated to speak, you know, and now he runs a magazine that's sort of an alternative voice in his denomination for a progressive perspective. I'm being interviewed on his podcast next week. So, you know, I'm very happy that he finally kind of came out and told his truth after 30 years of not doing so. That part makes me cringe. But he's hardly the only one who says one thing and knows another. A huge percentage of evangelical pastors are doing this because if you have an ounce of curiosity as you proceed in your career, if you start reading books and getting further educated, then it's inevitable you're going to begin to question the dogma that you once believed in. At a church that I visit, a different church, actually a really interesting church, a ex-evangelical church. So this is a whole church of people that made the shift from evangelical theology to a more open, progressive spirituality. Aldea Spiritual Community in Tucson. Loved it. It was great. But I was asked afterwards by a parishioner about a statement that I had made referring to the sacred myth of the gospel. The gospel as a sacred myth. Now this woman read books. She read the Jesus Seminar books. This is a group of scholars that have been on a quest for many years to figure out who the real historical Jesus was and what he said and what he did and what he didn't say and what he didn't do, right? To peel back the layers to get to the real Jesus. She said, now that's the Jesus I follow, not this myth stuff. And my response was that the Jesus Seminar did a great thing on this quest to find the historical Jesus. They didn't find the historical Jesus, I don't think. It was a failed effort because the myth and the history are so muddled and jumbled together in the midst of history that there's no way to really separate out which is which. and find the line between them. However, in the process of doing this mad quest of trying to find who the historical Jesus was, they did reveal and peel back the layers to get us a really good picture of the early Christian church and the ways that the spirituality of early Christians. They succeeded in that, in revealing that through this amazing scholarship. So the Jesus that we care about is a blend of myth and history, fact and fiction, if you will. Now, does that make the mythology part a lie? Well, no, because myth is not the same as a lie at all, right? Good, meaningful, deep myth contains truth, deep truth, that in some ways can't be delivered in any other way but through some kind of fiction. And the figure of Jesus himself is part of that, and that's okay, that's good. That figure, that blend of myth and history, is the one who matters to us. So the Christian churches have had a long obsession with this question of fact versus fiction, right? Started in the 17th century when scholars started using the historical scientific method to understand the Bible, and then they realized, quickly, after asking questions that really hadn't been asked before, they realized that the Bible was written by people who had access to grind, lived in historical contexts that affected what they wrote, of course. And the people who accepted this scholarship are now what we call progressive Christians, and the people who vigorously and angrily denounced this idea that the scripture, much of it was mythological, those people became what we now call evangelical and fundamentalist Christians. Interestingly, a lot of what we now call progressive Christians are just as hung up on facts as the fundamentalists are, right? The fundamentalists think that this whole book, the Bible, the whole thing is facts, right? And a lot of progressive Christians, like this woman who was into the Jesus seminar, said, well, I'm into the part of this that's factual, which is very small, sorry to say. The Jesus seminar came up with the 5 Gospels, which I commend to. It's a super interesting, useful book, and it breaks down. You've heard of the red letter edition of the Bible? That's where the words of Jesus are in red. So in the Jesus seminar version of the New Testament, the words of Jesus that the scholars think he actually said, historical Jesus said, are in red. The words that might have been said by him are in pink. The words that they doubt were said by him are in gray. And the words that they're quite sure were not said by the historical Jesus are in black. And it's worth looking at this book because there are very few red letters. The amount of it that's red is very small. And the problem with that is that some of our very most meaningful and powerful and important passages are in gray and black. So that's a problem. So there's just this hang up about, what are the facts of Christianity, right? And oddly, fundamentalists and progressives share, many progressives and almost all fundamentalists share this obsession with the factuality question. It seems to me that we progressive Christians, our chore now, our task today, is to de-factualize Christianity, right? There was a big effort to demythologize Christianity, but now we need to de-factualize it, because what we're after here are truths, right? Spiritual truths, spiritual realities, which again, sometimes are much better conveyed in parables and myths and stories and poetry than they are in cold, hard historical facts. So, myths, good myths, the sacred myths of the scripture are not lies, they are modes and means of transmitting truth, real truths. So, let us lift up the life and spirit affirming myths, while at the same time committing ourselves to truth-telling and to discerning the time and the manner in which we tell truths about things like affairs and also about things like sea glass. Thank you, Calvin. Today, as we go into our time of communion, I'd like us to celebrate a global phenomenon called Pluralism Sunday. So this is something that I started about 3 years ago through the Center for Progressive Christianity. Pluralism Sunday is celebrated by churches, progressive churches around the country, around the world, as a time to celebrate the idea that our religion is as good for us as other religions are good for others. That our religion is not the only one that bears truth, spiritual truth, the kind of truth we're talking about this morning. Other religions do that as well. We live in Southern California in perhaps the most religiously diverse area of the planet. It has been recorded that there are more different kinds of Buddhists in Los Angeles than there are in Bangkok, which is a Buddhist city. All right? So we live in the middle of all of it, of the world's religions. And so Southern California, of all places, is a place where we should be celebrating this and appreciating the wisdom and the depths of other faiths. So today I would like to introduce our sacrament of communion, our Eucharist. I would like to introduce it as prasad, P-R-A-S-A-D. We're going to share prasad. In the Sikh faith, S-I-K-H, some people say Sikh, but the Sikhs say Sikh. The Sikh faith is a monotheistic religion. It shares a lot with Christianity and Islam, and also with Hinduism. And in its worship, in the Gurdwara, the temple of the Sikhs, in worship, their worship is beautiful. I've been many, many times with students over the years when I was at USC to Gurdwaras. You gotta go sometime. How's this for a religion? You show up, you sit down on the floor on mats, on a carpet, men over here, women over here. So the women aren't behind the men, they're next to them. They're separate, but they're together. Because they believe in the equality of men and women, much more than a lot of other faith traditions. You listen to beautiful music. Their Bible, the Guru Granth Sahib, consists entirely of songs. Imagine our Bible with nothing but the Psalms. This whole thing was just psalms, just songs of praise to God, to Satnam or Wahaguru, as they would refer to the divine. So they sing while playing the harmonium and the tabla, the drums. It's gorgeous. And you sit there as long as you want. And then at a certain point in the ceremony, they offer prasad. This is Sikh, what we would call communion or the Eucharist. It's a little ball of dough, halva dough. wheat flour, honey, water. It's delicious. Anyway, everybody gets a little ball of this presented to them ceremonially at this point in the service. And then you go back and sit down and listen to more music. And then when you're done with that, you stand up and you go into the Langar Hall, Langar, and they feed you a terrific meal of Indian food for free. It's their religion is to feed you. How good is that for a religion? You listen to beautiful music with beautiful people, and then you eat a meal for free at their main temple in India, in Amritsar, in Punjab in India. They serve 100,000 meals a day to anybody who shows up for free. That's their religion. So let us participate in Langar today in prasad. Share the prasad of our bread and our cup. Because as the Christ lifted up the cup and lifted up the bread and offered it, so the Sikhs offer their prasad to everyone equally. And they don't ask you what you believe. They don't ask you if you're a Sikh. They don't ask you if you believe in this or that. They don't care what nationality or race or anything you are. Everybody is treated the same. Everybody gets the same portion, rich or poor. Nobody is treated any different than anyone else. And so it is with our communion. This is for everybody, regardless of deeds or creeds or ages or wages. Come forward, share in the cup, share in the bread, share in the prasad in our beautiful little Gurdwara. Amen. Come, take, eat, and drink.